They told me lightning only strikes once. But that night, on March 4th, 2026, the lightning did not just hit my house. It revealed a secret, a presence, something that had been waiting in the dark for the light to finally fade. It was around 11 p.m. when I finally drifted off to sleep, listening to the rhythmic, heavy drumming of the rain against my bedroom window. The house was quiet. Too quiet. You know that kind of silence that feels heavy, like it is pressing down on your chest, making it hard to take a full breath. I was deep in a dreamless sleep when a sudden, violent crack of thunder shook the very foundation of the building. I jolted awake, my heart already hammering against my ribs like a trapped bird. The air in the room felt different. It was cold, unnaturally cold, and smelled faintly of ozone and wet earth. I stayed perfectly still, my eyes wide open, staring into the thick, suffocating darkness of my ceiling. My breathing was shallow, jagged, as I tried to make sense of the sudden wakefulness. And then, it happened. A blinding electric blue flash of lightning ripped through the sky outside, illuminating my entire bedroom for a fraction of a second. In that brief moment of light, I saw it. There, in the far corner of my room, right next to the old wooden wardrobe, a figure. It was tall, impossibly thin, and draped in what looked like heavy, tattered, dark clothing. It was crouched low to the ground, its long, skeletal fingers gripping the edge of the floorboards. But it was the face that made my blood turn to ice. It was pale, almost translucent, with no visible nose, and eyes that were nothing more than deep, hollow pits of absolute blackness. The light vanished as quickly as it came, plunging the room back into a darkness so dense it felt physical. I stopped breathing. I did not move a single muscle. I prayed to God that my eyes were playing tricks on me, that the stress of the storm had conjured a nightmare out of the shadows. But then, I heard it. A slow, wet, rhythmic sound. The sound of someone or something breathing. It was heavy, labored, as if every breath was a struggle through a throat filled with fluid. It was coming from that corner. My mind was screaming at me to run, to scream, to reach for the lamp on my nightstand. But I was paralyzed. My limbs felt like they were made of lead, pinned down by a weightless, invisible force. I lay there in the dark, counting the seconds, waiting for the next flash. The rain seemed to grow louder, a chaotic symphony of water and wind that drowned out the sound of my own frantic heartbeat. Then, another bolt of lightning struck, closer this time, the thunder following almost instantly. The room flared white. The corner was empty. My heart leapt with a momentary sense of relief, a desperate hope that it had all been a hallucination. But as the light faded, I felt a sudden sharp tug at the bottom of my bedsheets. Something was moving under the fabric. A slow, deliberate crawl, starting from my feet and moving up towards my knees. I could feel the weight of it. It was heavy, solid, and freezing cold. The mattress dipped under the pressure. I tried to pull my legs away, but I was frozen, trapped in a state of absolute primal terror. I squeezed my eyes shut, whispering a silent prayer, my entire body trembling so hard the bed frame began to creak. Then, I felt a hand, a long, cold, damp hand with skin that felt like wet parchment, slowly wrapping around my ankle. The grip was firm, unyielding. I opened my eyes just as another flash of lightning illuminated the room. The figure was no longer in the corner. It was right at the foot of my bed, leaning over me, its hollow black eyes staring directly into mine. Its mouth was open, a jagged, dark hole, and I could see the faint glimmer of something moving inside. It did not speak. It did not make a sound. It just watched me with a terrifying, silent intensity. The thunder that followed was deafening, a roar that seemed to vibrate inside my very skull. I finally found my voice and let out a strangled, breathless scream, kicking out with all my might. My foot hit something solid, something that felt like cold stone, and the weight on the bed suddenly vanished. I scrambled back against my headboard, fumbling frantically for my phone, my fingers shaking so much I almost dropped it. I turned on the flashlight, the weak beam cutting through the darkness like a dull knife. The room was empty. The wardrobe was shut. The corner was silent. But as I panned the light across the floor, my breath hitched in my throat. There, leading from the window to the side of my bed, were a series of wet, muddy footprints. They were large, distorted, and smelled of stagnant water and old graves. I looked at the window. It was locked from the inside. The glass was unbroken. There was no way anyone could have gotten in. I realized then that I was not just dealing with an intruder. I was dealing with something that did not belong in this world. I sat there for the rest of the night, huddled in the corner of my bed, the flashlight beam fixed on those muddy tracks. Every time the lightning flashed, I braced myself, expecting to see those hollow eyes staring back at me from the shadows. The storm eventually began to subside, the rain turning into a dull, repetitive drizzle. But the fear stayed. It settled deep in my bones, a permanent, chilling reminder of what the light had revealed. I knew I couldn't stay in that room. I needed help. I needed someone to tell me I wasn't losing my mind. But little did I know, the arrival of the authorities wouldn't bring peace. It would only bring a new kind of horror. Because while I was looking at the footprints, something else was happening in the living room downstairs. Something the security cameras were recording in the dead of night. Something that would make even the bravest men tremble with fear. I called the fire department, my voice a shaky, unrecognizable mess as I explained the lightning strike. Half the power in the house was out, and I used that as an excuse, a logical shield to hide the true, pulsating terror that was making my teeth chatter. I needed people here. I needed uniforms, heavy boots, and bright industrial flashlights to chase away the things that the lightning had revealed. When they arrived, the rain was still a relentless wall of water, the red and blue lights of their truck reflecting off the puddles in the driveway like shimmering, distorted oil.
I'm okay.
2 firemen
It's just
entered,
the wind.
their heavy gear dripping, the smell of wet rubber and smoke filling the hallway. I led them into the living room, my hands still trembling as I pointed out the flickering lights and the smell of ozone. They began their inspection, their powerful beams of light cutting through the thick, heavy shadows of my home. But as they moved, I noticed something that made the air in my lungs turn to lead. One of the firemen, a tall man with a weathered face, stopped in his tracks. He was staring at the large, dark sofa in the corner of the room. He did not move. He just stood there, his flashlight beam fixed on the empty cushions. He looked over at his partner, then back at the couch, his expression shifting from professional focus to a chilling, wide-eyed confusion. I watched him, my heart stopping in my chest. He looked as if he was seeing someone sitting there, someone I could not see. He shined his light directly onto the fabric, and that is when I saw it. The imprint on the back cushion. It was deep, as if a heavy weight was leaning against it. And then, as we all watched in a suffocating dead silence, the cushion began to rise. It did not pop back quickly. It was slow, deliberate, a gradual shifting of the fabric as if someone had just leaned forward and stood up. My blood ran cold. The fireman backed away, his hand instinctively reaching for his radio, his eyes never leaving the spot. He swore later that he saw the outline of a person, a dark, shimmering blur that seemed to absorb the light of his torch. We moved to the hallway, the tension so thick it felt like it would snap. They checked the panels, their movements hurried now, their professional masks slipping to reveal a raw, primal unease. I stood by the front door, my eyes darting between the firemen and the dark living room I had just fled. And then I heard it. The faint, unmistakable click of the back door lock. I had locked it myself when I came down. It is a heavy, old-fashioned bolt that makes a loud, metallic thud. This was different. This was the sound of a lock being turned from the inside. Slowly, stealthily, as if someone or something was letting itself out, or perhaps moving deeper into the shadows of the basement. The firemen finished their check, their reports filled with talk of electrical surges and minor hazards. But their eyes told a different story. They left quickly, their truck disappearing into the rainy night, leaving me alone once again in the half-dark house. I couldn't go back to sleep. I went to the small office where the security monitor sits. I began scrubbing through the footage from the living room camera, the battery-operated one that had captured everything while the power was flickering. I watched the firemen enter. I watched them check the walls. And then, I reached the moment where they stared at the couch. In the grainy night vision footage, the room was awash of ghostly greens and grays. I saw the firemen stop. I saw the beam of the flashlight hit the sofa. And then, my heart completely stopped. In the corner of the frame, standing just behind the fireman who was staring at the couch, was a silhouette. It was tall, gaigwook, and draped in those same tattered dark clothes I had seen in my bedroom. Its head was tilted at an unnatural, sickening angle, its hollow black pits for eyes fixed directly on the back of the fireman's neck. It was so close to him, almost touching him. It had been standing there the entire time, a silent, menacing shadow in the middle of the room. And as the fireman turned to leave, the figure did not vanish. It turned its head slowly, its neck cracking with a sound I could almost hear through the screen, and looked directly into the camera lens. It stayed there for a long, agonizing minute, its dark, jagged mouth curling into a horrific, wordless grin. Then, it simply stepped back into the shadows of the hallway that leads to my bedroom. I am sitting here now, the weak light of the monitor, the only thing keeping the darkness at bay. The rain has stopped, but the silence is worse. The silence is where it hides. I can hear a slow, heavy creak coming from the ceiling above me, a floorboard shifting under a heavy, solid weight. It is still here. It never left. It was just waiting for the light to go out again. If you are watching this, and you hear a sound in your house during a storm, do not look. Do not turn on the light, because some things are better left in the dark. If you have ever felt a presence in your room that you couldn't explain, share your story in the comments below. I need to know I am not the only one. And please, don't forget to subscribe to Lost Horror. I don't know if I will be able to post next week, but if I do, I will tell you what happened when the sun finally came up. If it ever does, stay safe and keep your doors locked from the inside.